other team members. So from now, I will be doing the implementing the backend part. So we are going to do MERN stack, right? So here we are going to implement the backend using Express and Node. So let's see what is my work. Okay, before moving on, I will introduce myself. I'm Senura Vihan Jayadeva, third year software engineering undergraduate at SLIIT, and currently I am working as an intern software engineer at Pearson Lanka. Okay, right. Okay, let's see what is our workflow is. So as the first step, as Russell mentioned, I'm going to set up the Express server, and then I'm going to establish a MongoDB database connection between the server and MongoDB, and then define our schema. You will getting to know what is this schema and all those stuff. So right. Okay, let's see what is our GitHub. Okay, let's go to GitHub and let's see what is my issue is. Okay, here go to issues. Okay, here you can see my first task is basic server configuration. So I'm going to desktop and create a folder for our project called ITP backend demo, and I'm going to open our project from VS Code. Right, I will close the command prompt. Right. Okay. First of all, we have to initialize when we are implementing the backend. We have to create a file called initialize the project. We have to create a file called package.json. So what is this package.json file? So let's move back to our slide. So wait, right. What is package.json file? Actually, it is the heart of our node project, right? It contains all the metadata. Metadata means like what is the name of our project, what is the version of our project. If we want, we can put a description for our project. So, and the main file and some scripts, as well as it contains inside the package.json file, it contains all the npm dependencies that we are going to install. You may not aware about what is npm is. I will get into that in few seconds. And yeah, that is package.json file. Basically, it contains all the things about our project, right? So we can create a package.json file by, in the terminal, we can give the command npm init. Okay, after giving npm init, they are asking a package name, and we have to give the version. If we want, we can give a description for our project. So we'll give like ITP backend demo, and what is the entry point, and test commands. So for now, I will skip those things. And finally, yes, right. Now we successfully created the package.json file. Inside the package.json file, you can see all the metadata that we have given. So you can see the name of our project, version, description, and other stuffs, right? So after creating a package.json file, we have to install some npm dependencies that we are going to require, right? So let's see first what is this npm package, npm modules, npm packages. So npm actually stands for Node Package Manager, right? It is the world's largest software registry. So we can use like there are as example there are npm packages like Mongoose, Express, Cos, Axios. So what npm package do is think like this in this project also. When I'm going to implement the backend, I want to connect the our backend server with MongoDB. So actually, I can I can do it by the scratch, right? So, but using a node module, we can easily connect the server with our MongoDB using some commands, right? Like which we can use like mongoose.connect method. There we have only to give the MongoDB URL as the parameter only. So uh, that's the advantage of npm package. ඒ කියන්නේ දැන් එකම දේ දැන් අපි npm මොකද්ද backend server එක MongoDB එකත් එක්ක connect කරන එක මිලියන ගාණක් developers ලා කරනවානේ. ඒ කියන්නේ අපි ඕනේ නැහැ. ඒ කියන්නේ අපි හැමතිස්සම ස්මාර්ට් වෙන්න ඕනේ. හරිද? ඒ කියන්නේ අපි ස්ක්‍රැච් එකේ ඉඳලම හදන්න ඕනේ. ඔයගලන්ට එහෙම කරන්න ඕන නම් ඊට වඩා අලුත් දෙයක් මොකක් හරි කරලා ඒක npm මොඩියුල් එකක් විදියට දෙන්න පුළුවන්. එතකොට වෙන කාට හරි මේ npm මොඩියුල් එක use කරලා ඒ මොකක් හරි ඒ දේ කරන දේ කරගන්න පුළුවන්. So that is the advantage of npm. So in our project we are going to install mainly three npm packages. First one is Express. It is a Node.js web application framework that helps to create REST APIs, and it support MVC architecture also. I think you're aware about MVC architecture because in the previous semester, I think you done OOP project. So it also support NPM architecture, and we can create something like routes. And as the second npm package, we are going to install npm package called pause, and then to connect our MongoDB with our backend server, we are going to install a package called Mongoose. So Mongoose is also a Node.js framework that we can let us access to MongoDB in an object-oriented way, right? So we can install those packages. Okay, let's go to our terminal again. We can install those npm packages by using npm install. We can use install or I also fine, right? Both are fine. npm I Express and Mongoose. Okay, it will take like 10 seconds up to like 10 seconds to install all these packages. Let's see, right? Yeah, we successfully install all the npm packages that we are going to need. So after installing those npm packages, you can see a folder called node modules. Here you can see the Express. Here you can see the Express that we installed, and here you can see the Mongoose. And then ඔයගලන්ට ප්‍රශ්නයක් තියෙන්න පුළුවන්. දැන් අපි install කරේ 3යිනේ. ඒ වුණාට මෙතන මේ පාඨතෝගයක් තියෙනවා. දැන් මෙතන වෙන ගොඩක් තියෙනවා npm dependencies. ඒ කියන්නේ දැන් මේ Mongoose කියන දැන් අපි Mongoose කියන npm package එකට ගත්තොත් ඒකටත් use වෙලා තියෙනවා තව npm modules. එතකොට අපි npm මොකක් හරි මේ Mongoose කියන එක install කරාම මොකද වෙන්නේ? එයාට අදාළ වෙන අනිත් npm dependencies ටික එයා මෙතන install කරගන්නවා. ඒක තමයි මෙතන මේ ගොඩක් තියෙන්නේ. ඔයගොල්ලෝ බය වෙන්න එපා. මේ මෙතන ගොඩක් තියෙන්නේ අර හතර ඇරෙන්න තව ගොඩක් තියෙනවා. ඒ හතර ඒවටත් ඕන වෙන ඒවා. ඒවා තමයි මෙතන මේ install වෙලා තියෙන්නේ. Right. After installing those npm packages, let's go to package.json file. Inside the package.json file, you can see under dependencies, you can see Cause, Express, and Mongoose npm packages. So inside the package.json file, it contains all the npm packages that we are going to install, right? So okay, now I think we are done with the package.json file and installing relevant. So I'm going to also now at the root of the project, I'm going to server.js. Inside the JS file, we are going to set up a simple Express server. So before implementing, I will go to Express documentation. So this is the Express documentation. I think one of our team member will put the link of this documentation in the chat box. So okay, this is the homepage of Express documentation. So in here, getting the tab, there is an option called installing. So here you can see the procedure that we follow. They created the package.json file using npm init. So then they tell that we have to install the Express npm package using npm install express. So we done those things, right? So now what I want to know is how to create a simple Express server. So under getting started, there is an option called tab called hello world. So here you can see the implementation for a simple Express server. So they uh, they actually import the Express npm package using require method and assign to a constant variable called Express, and they initialize the Express server to a variable called constant variable called app, and to start the Express server they use a method called listen and pass the port number to the listen method as a parameter. I think you're familiar with what is a port number means, right? So you work with Java servlets, so you know how to I mean අපේ කාලේ නම් මට මතකයි මේ අර Apache එකේ එහෙම අපිට ගොඩක් සැරයක් ඔය port number එක වෙනස් කරන්න උනා මොකද ඒ port number එකෙන් තමයි ඔය application එක run වෙන්නේ. හරිද? අපේ back end එක run වෙන්නේ මෙන්න මේ කියන port number එකෙන්. එතකොට අර Apache Tomcat එකේ එහෙම අපිට වෙනස් කරන්න උනා මොකද ඒ port number එක තව තැනකින් use කරනවා. ඒ නිසා මම හිතනවා ඔයගලන්ට port number එක කියන්නේ මොකක්ද කියලා මේ දලා අදහසක් ඇති කියලා. So this is the implementation for the implementation for setting up a simple Express server. So let's move back to server.js file, and here I'm going to set up a simple Express server by writing const express equals to require. I'm going to import the npm Express npm package that we have installed. What I'm going to do is I'm going to create another very constant variable called app and initialize the Express server. Now at the bottom, I want to start our server. Right to that app.listen method. Here I'm going to pass the port number. Like it can be 5000, it can be 3000 or anything like that. But instead of giving it directly like this, I can use a variable. So let's create a variable called const port, and I will do an implementation like this. Okay, process.env.port or 5000. Okay, එතකොට මේකෙදි වෙන්නේ ඒ කියන්නේ අපි process.env.port කියලා තියෙන්නේ ඔයගොල්ලෝ environment variables ගැන සමහර විට දන්නවත් ඇති දන්නේ නැතුවත් ඇති. හරිද? හිතන්නකෝ environment variable එකක් තිබ්බා කියලා port කියලා. හරිද? එතකොට වෙන්නේ මේ port environment variable එකක් තිබ්බොත් port කියලා ඒක assign වෙනවා මෙන්න මේ port කියන variable එකට, constant variable එකට. එහෙම environment variable එකක් තිබ්බේ නැත්තම් මොකද වෙන්නේ? මේ 5000 කියන එක තමයි මෙන්න මේ port number එකට assign වෙන්නේ. මේක ඇත්තටම ගොඩක්ම බලපාන්නේ අපි මේ app එක host කරද්දි. එතකොට ඒ host කරන තැන ඒගොල්ලෝ දෙනවා environment variables ඒ port number එකෙන් තමයි අපි application එක run කරන්නේ. ඒකට තමයි අපි මෙන්න මේම process.env.port කියලා දෙන්නේ. So after creating a constant variable called port, I'm going to pass it here as the first parameter. Now I want to check whether my Express server is running or not. So here I'm giving an arrow function here. I think you may familiar with arrow function on may or may not. So actually there's no time to explain everything, right? So we will provide definitely our members will provide the links to refer those materials. So after this session, you can refer what is arrow function, what is environment variable, what is a port number, those things, right? So here I'm going to implement whether our application is running or not, right? So I want to know, I'm going to give a console output here, like let's give a message like server is running, right? If the server is running successfully, this message will be appear in the terminal. So we are done with creating a simple express server. So let's move back to terminal, and to start our server, I'm going to write this command node server.js, right? After giving node server.js, you can see the server is running message. So that means our simple express server is running successfully. Okay, now we are done. Basically, we are done with the express server. So next thing we have to do is we have to establish a MongoDB connection between MongoDB database and our express server. So before that, I think Lasal will create a MongoDB database, and he will show you how to do the configuration. Lasal?
Yes, sir.
I
Thank
think.
you. So before as I get get my screen configured, so there was a question on the thread asking whether there is a equivalent for Node Package Manager in the Java and other paradigms. So Node NPM is basically a dev automation tool where you can use it for management of packages, where you could use for test, used to build things and all that. And if you take Java paradigm, there is things such as Maven and Gradle and all that. If you are into those, do look into them. I do appreciate people like exploring these kind of fields. So yeah, so we are here at databases. So what a database is basically is I know that you are having when you say database, I know that you paint a picture of several tables and links between each other, right? But a database isn't necessarily should be a table-based database, basically relational-based databases. So there can be non-relational databases as well. So when people wanted to store data in the early stages, they either used a CSV file or an Excel file or a text file and all that, right? But this approach wasn't really scalable, right? When you have thousands and thousands of data, and if you go to the concepts such as big data, this isn't scalable, right? So people shifted their approaches, and there are a lot of different approaches when it comes to storing data. So there is the relational approach, which you are really, I mean, you guys are masters of it, right? You know how to draw ER diagrams, how to define schemas and all that. You are quite aware of this, right? And this is also another relational based and database approach, which is OLAP. And there are non-relational based approaches such as key value, column, graph, document. So if you are familiar with the concept of Python dictionaries, so there is a key and there is a value respect to that key. So that concept is developed further when developing these key value pair databases. And we'll be diving into document-based databases, especially because in the MongoDB, in the MERN stack, so we'll be using the Mongo databases. So which is a document-based database. So there are also graph-based databases and column-based databases. I highly recommend if you could further read a small article. Don't go. I'm not saying don't go deeper, but just have that knowledge, right? Having that know a lot of everything, right? That is an added advantage, like when you are dealing in the tech industry. So yeah, why NoSQL? So one problem that we arrive at when we first start doing the project is we don't know the scope, we don't properly understand the requirements, we don't know the scope of the project, we can't properly define a schema under those circumstances, right? So when we want to take that relational route, we have to have a proper understanding of what the user needs and all the basic requirements of the user in order to define the schema, right? But that is a disadvantage of schema based relation based databases such as MySQL. So what NoSQL does is it doesn't doesn't require you to properly define a solid ER diagram and all that for your database. You could do that, and there is a mixture. There are mixtures of these two databases as well. If you are familiar with Firestore, so that is a mixture of SQL and non-SQL. NoSQL doesn't necessarily mean not SQL. It means that not only SQL, right? So yeah. So coming back to the topic, why SQL, right? So a lot of companies nowadays are using SQL based databases because they are highly scalable, and it is open source, and there is a lot of community support, right? So if you take examples for key value pair databases, there's Redis. Don't try to memorize these. Just like have them in your mind if you come across these. So this is so if you come across these in the industry, like you know what these basically are, right? These jargon so we'll be diving into MongoDB, which is a document-based database. So it stores data as JSON and XML and all that. We'll look at them. So yeah. So I will. So there is two approaches you could take. I mean, there are many approaches, but there is mainly two approaches. You could host the MongoDB server locally, which you can install, from the official website, or you could go for a service such as MongoDB Atlas, which is a online database server. So they allow one cluster and up to 500 MB of storage. So for basic development, that is totally fine by my opinion. Yeah, so it is loading. So I'll log out of it. So since I've already logged in. Yep. So I will give it as login as Google. So you could either create an account or all that. So I'll log in as Google. I'm sorry, it is logging in. I don't know why. So when you provide an email that you haven't already created a cluster, you could take this row. So basically, this is basically the setup process. Yes. So you could create an organization and all that. So I'll show you an already created database, right? This is taking quite a lot of time. Yeah. So when you go take that initial setup route, so you will arrive at this page, right? It will create you a cluster. Cluster is basically where your database is hosted, right? It will ask you the cloud service provider, which you can give as AWS or Azure and all that. And it will ask you where to host that. I'll probably choose Mumbai because it is much closer to Sri Lanka, and it will take some time. I mean, it will take I can't say time, small time. It will take around 5 minutes. It will be loading and loading, and yeah. So you will arrive at a screen like this, right? So this is your cluster. So which I named as the Devgenix Sri Lanka. So this is the cluster that I've already used for. So that we've used for one of our projects, this year projects. So when you go to collections, you could see that. So this is the name of the database, Devgenix. So and these are the documents, right? A document is these are like the documents that the data is stored in, right? So you can see under admin, like there is an admin ID, there's a role, there is a first name, email. There is data stored in here, but it is not in like a table or all that, right? There are no like foreign keys and primary keys and all that. You could see that, right? So we'll show you how to define schemas and upload your data back to this backend database server. So Senura will be diving into those. So that is basically what a document looks like, right? So it is basically like a JSON object which has an ID. This is to identify this document uniquely, and there is a role. We define these fields, and this is the value corresponding to that field, right? So that is a basic database. That is a basic document, and how data are stored. So I'll log out from that, and I'll log back into our demo from our demo account, so that I could show you how to make the database network connections and give database access, right? So assume that you first logged in, and this is the basic screen that you get, right? And there is no data here and all that. So the first thing I'll do is I'll set up my database access. So I'll go to database access. So I'll delete myself from here, since I've already given myself access. So under here you could add the database user, and you could like this under ISDM and DMS and all that. I believe you guys have a proper understanding about how access privileges are given, about read and write and all that, how the admin privileges and all that. Those concepts are explored deeply in those modules. So if you are not familiar with them, just keep it as it is and add a new user. And so we've given database access to this user. So next what I'll do is I'll give the network access. So it is already given, so I'll delete it. So under here, so this is the basic screen that you land when you are doing this for the first time, right? So I'll click add that IP. And since you are doing this for development purposes, you could allow from everywhere, right? Allow this. It will click. You could click this button, and it will allow all the IP addresses. So and click confirm. So it will take some time, and it will allow. In the meantime, we'll go back to clusters. So we've created the basic database. Assume that this is empty. So when you go to collections, so there is some type of data that are already there, right? But what will do is we'll reset. So the next thing that we'll do is we have to connect this this database server to the backend application, right? Which is implemented by Senura. So we can achieve that by going into connect and going into connect application, which will allow you to connect many types of applications. So we are implementing our backend using Node. So assume that you are taking another approach. Maybe you are implementing it using Java Spring Boot. So there are drivers for that as well. So there is PHP, there is C#, .NET, there is C, there is Java, and so since we are implementing it using Node.js, so we'll choose it as Node.js. So after that, they'll prompt you to add the the version that version of Node.js that you are using. Since most of you guys might be using 3.7 or later, so add this, right? So it will give you the connection string, right? So this is like the URI that you could use to deal with the database. You could send data, you could retrieve data, you could update, you could delete. All of that is handled through this URI, right? So when you look at this URI, it says that add the username here and add the password here, right? So the password and the username that you gave under database access, you could replace them here, and which will get you the connection string. So Senura will be using this connection string in order to send data from the backend to our database. So yeah, that is for it from the MongoDB side. So Senura, you can take over.
Okay, thank you, Lasal. Okay, let me share my screen. Okay. Okay, I think my screen is visible, right? Lasal.
Yes, your screen is visible.
Okay. Right. Now, Lasal showed how to create a MongoDB database and how to do the necessary configurations. So now I'm going to implement the establishment between MongoDB and our backend Express server. So for at first, so I'm going to import the Mongoose npm package, right? So for that, we can write const mongoose equals to I'm going to import the Mongoose npm package, right? Okay. Before moving on, let me give some time to go to the Mongoose documentation. Right. This is the Mongoose documentation, right? I think after this session, I will be providing these links. So let's go to read docs. Okay. Here you can see under guides, there is an option called connection. So under the connection, you can see you can connect to MongoDB. You can connect to MongoDB with the mongoose.connect method. So we can use this mongoose.connect method to make a establishment between our MongoDB database and backend server. So I'm going to copy. Here is the method. So here you can see as the first parameter, they are passing our connection string that Lasal mentioned earlier. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this thing and let's move back to our code. And after this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to paste it here. So I have to change the MongoDB connection string, right? So I'm going to get it from here. Oh, I think let's go to here, and here under the connection, you can choose connect to application, and you can get the connection stream from here, right? So let's copy this and paste it as the passes it as the first parameter, right? Now actually this connection mongoose.connect method return a promise, right? That means actually promise is also a thing in JavaScript, so you can refer those materials, right? Don't wait until they are providing those links. You can search it on Google and learn those materials by yourself. So I'm not going to tell what is a promise and all those stuff. So please search it on Google. So it is the best way to learn something. So I told that this mongoose.connect method return a promise. So it's like if this connection is success, we can use a then method, right? In the then I'm going to give a arrow function, and here I'm going to use a console log out as the output. And if the connection between the MongoDB and our Express server, then I will print MongoDB connected message, right? If the connection is successful, this MongoDB connected message will be appear in our terminal, right? I think we are done with connecting MongoDB database, right? Okay, let's stop the server, and I'm going to restart our server again to check our establishment between MongoDB is successful or not. Okay, you can see our server is running, right? Server is running successfully, and the MongoDB connected also successfully. But there is a warning, right? So here this said connect current server discovery something they are mentioned, right? So what I'm going to do here is copy this thing, and I'm going to paste it right next to here. So let's see. Okay, before moving on, I want to say something that ඔගලන්ට පේනවා දැන් අපි change එකක් කරාට පස්සේ අපි හැමතිස්සෙම මේ terminal එකේ මේක stop කරන්න ඕනේ, ආයි start කරන්න ඕනේ, right? ඉතින් දැන් මේක ලොකු headache එකක් නේ. දැන් අපි develop ලොකු code එකක් ගහගෙන යද්දී implement කරගෙන යද්දී අපිට හැමතිස්සෙම බෑ stop කරන්නයි start කරන්නයි stop කරන්නයි start කරන්නයි. ඉතින් අපි කරන්නේ මේකට වෙනම package එකක් තියෙනවා nodemon කියලා. So I'm going to install nodemon npm package, right? npm I nodemon. Actually this will help us to restart automatically the server when we are doing a change. So let's see, it will take like another 5 or 10 seconds. Okay, it will okay, right. Nodemon is installed successfully. So now we can in the terminal, let me clean, sorry. Here the terminal. Okay, so we can run our server from this command nodemon server.js. Now we don't have, when we are doing a change, we don't need to stop the server and start it again. It will automatically restart our Express server, right? Okay, now you can see our server is running successfully, and establishment between the MongoDB database and our Express server is successful. So actually I forgot to in the previous session I forgot to push our code to the GitHub. So let's stop this Express server and let's push this code to our GitHub. Lasa, can you explain? Lasa?
So yeah. Senura, if you can go to the GitHub page.
Yeah,
I'll do it using Ustream rather than
okay, right.
So yeah, when you navigate to the code tab under inside your Git repository, you could see several codes that you could that provides a basic path on how to push your code to GitHub, right? So these are basically for beginners, like beginners. So we'll issue the git init command, and I'll guide you through what git init does. So you can either copy it from here, or like you could, I mean, as you guys move along the project, I mean, you will surely memorize them. I mean, it will come naturally to you. So what Git init does is it will initialize the project as a Git tracked repository, right? So it will create a .git file inside your repository, which is a hidden file, and we are basically saying that this is a Git initialize file. So after that, what you could do is Git add add. Sorry,
Okay, before
yeah,
that,
before adding
yeah.
the file. So next we'll have to do is so there is a lot of node modules, right? So node modules, if you take like a front end project, I mean, most bulk of the space is taken for the node modules. I mean, you guys might be familiar if you have implemented some application, like it will take almost 2 or 3 GB depending on how many packages you install. So we don't want Git. So these node modules everyone can download from the npm repository, right? So we don't want Git to track those files. So in order to do that, we'll create a Git igno file, which is basically a file telling Git to don't track these files, don't track the changes that are happening to these files, and we'll provide the path as /node modules, which is the path of the node module file. So now that we have asked Git not to track the node modules files, all the other files, including the package.json and server.json and all that, all files we wanted to be tracked by Git, right? So we wanted all the changes that are happening within those files to be tracked and do all the processes that I explained in the previous session. So in order to do that, we can issue the Git add dot command. So you can see that all the files are now tracked. So there is another way that you could do this. You could do this using the GitHub extension, which is provided by VS Code as well. But since most of you guys might not be using VS Code or using some other IDs, so we'll show it using the command line interface, which is the terminal, so that everyone can do this easily. So what we have done is, so we've added all the files that that we want to be tracked by Git. So we'll do next. What we'll do next is we'll provide Git commit -m and we'll provide commit message. So all these code is they are on the GitHub page, right? So if you can show them. Hello. Senura? I believe we are experiencing some technical difficulties.
Yeah, Salah, I think he is facing some technical errors.
So in the meantime, I'll share my screen and I'll show you these quotes. So if you go to GitHub and Git application code, so there is a so these are the codes that we issued, right? We issued the Git init command, which will initialize our repository. So if I make a small demo, so here is a uh, um, here is a file that contains some Python code. I mean, so you could go to command line using, like, if you double click on this path and issue the cmd command, it will open your default command line, right? So what I can do is so I can issue the command.
Can someone confirm?
Senura, I believe there there is a small connection issue here with you.
Yeah, that's it.
So until we get things figured out, I'll continue. So I could add git init command. So you could see that when I issue the git init command, it will create a .git file, right? So what is inside that .git file is beyond your scope. So what that .git file does is so it will initialize this project, and so we can add git add dot, which will add all the files that are inside all the files that are inside this folder to be tracked by git. And so after that I could issue the git commit.
Hello, Lasal. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I think there is.
Yeah, there was a small connection issue. If you can share your screen, I mean.
SLT connection.
Yeah.
Most consistent ISP
provider, right? We should be proud, actually. Yeah. Hello.
Still running our problem, no?
Okay, I will share my screen right now. So okay.
Yes, Senura, please share.
Okay, I think now we are good, right?
Yeah. So we were at the git commit command. So what git commit does is, so you could so going back to the terminal. So git commit does is, it will save all the changes that you have done to the files that are being tracked by git. So it will save those changes, right? Save in the sense it will commit those changes to your local repository, meaning that it will mirror all the changes that you have done in the local machine itself, but it isn't upon the GitHub, right? So I've told you that GitHub and Git are two different things, totally different things. So we've told Git, all right, we did those changes, okay. Say by issuing the git commit message, okay, save those changes to the local repository and keep them, right? So next what we have to do is we'll have to create a branch as main, right? So what a branch is like so when multiple developments are happening on the same code bases, just to be just to make sure that there is no harm happening to the working production code. What we do is we'll create a branch, and we issue we develop the things that we want to develop, and we issue pull requests from that branch to be merged to the main branch, right? So we issue the git branch command to check out the main branch. Senura? Hello.
I think Lasal, Senura is once again dropping.
Senura, I think it's better if you can turn off your camera, then
Yeah.
then it will be better, I think. No?
Yes.
Yeah.
Now
So
I think.
yeah, now
okay,
it's
right?
fine, I think. So we'll continue.
Okay.
So we issued the git branch command. So next our objective is to push the code that is in all the code that is in the local repository to the remote repository, which is GitHub, right? So in order to do that, we add something called a remote, right? So we can add the remote by issuing the git remote add origin, and you can basically copy this code from that page I showed you. So what git remote does is it will add a remote named as origin. You could provide any name. I mean, we provided it as origin. You could change that name. It's up to you. But the other codes are quite consistent, and so it will add a remote which you can use to push your code to the remote repository. Senura? So yeah. So next is git pull. We've established the remote. So what we can do next is using that remote, we could push that code to the remote repository, which is GitHub. So in order to do that, you could git push -u. Next provide the name of the remote that we've established and the branch name, which is main in our sense. So if you go back to GitHub and refresh them, we can show them. So the repository is empty, and when you refresh the repository, you can see that all the files that we asked Git to track, it is upon the remote repository itself, right? So other people can make clones of it, make forks of this code. Sorry, and collaborate to this code, and so on. Yeah.
Okay,
Senura, if you can close the issue as well and show them how
Yeah,
that
yeah.
happens.
Yeah. Okay, let's go to
So
basics.
now we've done both connections and basic configurations, right? So this issue is basically done, right? So you could yeah.
I close it, and this is also can closed. Okay. Actually, we plan to make a PR and show this to you, but unfortunately we forgot to push the GitHub, push the code to the GitHub first. Okay, and at the end, I
project
think,
like how that. So initially those issues were in the to-do list. So if you issued the pull request, එතකොට යනවා ඒක in progress වලට. But since we couldn't issue a pull request and do the code reviewing process, එතන පොඩි issue එකක් වුණා. So it will basically go to done because we've closed the issue, and yeah. So you can continue.
Okay, let's create another issue. Okay, here we can click on new issue. Let's give a name, like for now I will give like implement the routes. Sorry, implement the models controller and routes as the issue title. So issue will be assigned to me, and I will select the project ATP application. Okay, submit a new issue. Okay, now we can move back to our code, VS Code. Right now, up to now, we set up a simple Express server and make an establishment between MongoDB and our Express server. So next, let's go to the presentation slide. Right. Here is the process that we are going to follow, right? So we are going to send from the front end, we are going to send HTTP request, right? It will navigate to this route. So what routes do is it's forward the request to the appropriate controller. Then in the controller, we are going to implement the business logic, right? Like create, read, update, delete. Those CRUD functionalities are implemented in here. So the controller will be communicate with the database through a model. So we have to create a model, routes, and controllers. So basically what we are going to do here is we are going to create a simple student management system, like there are look like only like 3 attributes. So using those we will use this student management system to show you how to implement the backend. Okay, right. Let's move back to the code. And first of all, at the root of the project, I'm going to create a folder called models. Right. Inside the models folder, I will create another file called student.model.js. Okay. Inside the student model.js, I'm going to define the Mongoose schema. Right. So first of all, I will import the Mongoose npm package. Const mongoose equals to require. We are going to import the Mongoose package. Right. Before defining our Mongoose schema, let's move back to the Mongoose documentation. And here you can see under the guides, there is an option called schemas. So under schemas, you can see a topic called defining your schema. Here you can see everything in Mongoose is start with the schema. So each schema maps to a MongoDB collection, and this part is very important, and it defines the shape of the document. මම හිතන්නේ ලසල් මට මතකයි ඉස්සලා පෙන්නවා කොහොම ඩොකියුමන්ට්ස් කියන්නේ මොනවද කියලා. එතකොට ඒකේ තියෙන්න ඕන ඇට්‍රිබියුට්ස් මොනවද, කීස් වැලියුස් මොනවද කියලා අපි තීරණය කරන්නේ මෙන්න අපි ඩිෆයින් කරන්නේ මෙන්න මේ Mongoose schema කියන එකේදී. Okay, okay. Here we are going to define our schema. So what I'm going to do here is copy this code implementation and paste it inside the student.model.js. So, and I will remove those unwanted things, and let's create attribute called name and give it the schema type as string. And I'm going to okay, first of all, I forgot to rename this as student schema. Let's name it like student schema. And we are going to give attribute called name, and let's give another attribute called SLIIT ID, and as the schema type as string. Then for a change, I will define an attribute called age, and the schema type is number. Okay, after defining the schema, let's go to Mongoose documentation. And after defining your schema, right? Okay, before that, if you want to know more about how to define a schema, what are the attributes that can be used, what are the schema types that we can use, here is here you can see all the things are here, so you can refer those materials, right? So let's move back to our demonstration. So after defining our schema, to use that schema, we have to create a model, right? Here you can see to use our schema definition, right? To use our schema definition, we need to convert our schema into a model that we can work with. So what we have to do is, you can you remember that we created the schema called student schema. So what we have to do next is we have to convert our student schema into a model that we can work with. To do so, we can pass it into mongoose.model method. So in this mongoose.model method, we have to pass 2 parameters. First one is model name, second one is schema. that we have created. So what I'm going to do here is we are going to copy this code, and in the VS Code, I'm going to paste it under here. So as the first parameter, I told you we have to name a model. So I'm going to name it as student. And as the second parameter, we have to pass the student schema that we have created earlier. Okay, and here we will assign it to a variable called student. Okay, now we have created the student model, right? So after that, we are going to create something called routes and something called controllers. So we are going to use this student model in the controllers. So to use the student model, I have to export this module. So what I'm going to do here is we can achieve that by module.exports equals to student, right? Okay, now we are cool with the student model one. So now what I'm going to do is at the root of the project, we are going to create a folder called controller, right? In the control folder, inside the controller folder, let's create another file called student.controller.js, right? Inside the controller, inside this student.controller file, we are going to implement the business logic, like add a student record, get all student records in the database, find a student record by his ID, document ID. So those CRUD functionalities are going to be implemented here. So to use these CRUD functionalities, we have to import the student model first. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to write const student equals to, I'm going to import the student model that we have exported. So we can achieve this by require. I'm going to import the student module. So I'm going to, okay, let's go to outside from controller folder, and I can select model folder, and here there is the student model file. Okay, now what we have to do is we have to implement the method for add a student record and get all student record, because we have a very limited time, right? So we are decided to go with only two CRUD functionalities, right? Like add a student record and get all student records. So here first we will implement the code for the add student record, right? Okay, for add a student record, so I'm going to implement a arrow function const, let's name it as add student, and here we are going to define arrow function here, and let's give request and response as the parameters. I think maybe you may familiar with these two words, request and response, because we are dealing with HTTP request and HTTP responses, right? So we are giving as request and response as the parameter. So inside this curly braces, so we are going to implement the code for add student method. So what I'm going to do is, we are dealing with HTTP requests and responses. So think a scenario like add a student record, right? So what we are going to do is we are sending a HTTP request and we are going to send a JSON object, right? So what I need to do is I want to get the name, age, and our next attribute is what? SLIIT ID from that request body, from that JSON object. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to implement const. I will call this name as name, and I want to get the name from the request body dot name, right? So next I want to get the SLIIT ID, const SLIIT ID equals to request dot body dot SLIIT ID. So but there is a problem here, right? Think in the model class we have like more than 10 attributes, like then what you have to do, you have to define and initialize it one by one. If you have like 20 attributes, you have to give each by each, right? So it is not practical. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to do something like this, const I'm going to use curly braces, and inside the curly braces I'm going to pass the name SLIIT ID and what is our name, the attribute is the age and equals it to request dot body. Basically what the same thing, right? The same thing, but here we use a concept called destructuring. So you can search it in Google what is destructuring is. So we basically did the same thing. So now we don't need to specify one by one. Okay, let's remove this part. Okay, now we get the name SLIIT ID and the age from the HTTP request body. So next what I'm going to do here is I'm going to create a new student object. So let's create a new student object. Student equals to new student. This student is get from here, right? So new student, and inside the curly braces I'm going to pass these three attributes. Okay, now what I want to do is I want to save this new student object to the MongoDB database. For that there is a method in Mongoose called save. So what we can do is call this new student object and dot, there is a method called save. So this new, then what when we are calling this save method, it will pass to the MongoDB database through our model, and it will return the document that we have created using this new student object. So it will return the inside, then it will return this document that we have created, and as a response I want to pass this student document. So I can do it by res.json. So here in the documentation, let's go to Express documentation, and here under guide and routing, here you can see the responses types that we can use. Here you can see the response methods, right? Here you can see res.download, res.end, res.json. So I want to give our output as a JSON response. So I will use this method res.json. So inside the res.json I will pass student. Okay, I think now we are good. Oh, okay. And I forgot to add something. If the HTTP request is unsuccessful, if something went wrong with saving our new student object, so there should be an error message, right? So I can implement it within the catch. Here I'm going to get the error, and as a JSON response I will give it. Okay, right. Now we are good with the add the student method, add the student record method. So now we can implement the code for get all student records. So let's add the comment get all student records. Right here I'm going to give another arrow function, const get all students, and here the same thing, we are passing request and response. Okay. Inside these curly braces, I'm going to call the student object that we have imported. Okay, here student, there is a method to get all student records in MongoDB database. You can see when we go to Mongoose documentation here under, I think, queries. Yeah, here under queries you have all the methods that we can use. If you want to get some document by ID, if you want to search something by ID, you can use find by ID method, right? If you want to
I think another connection issue.
Senura?
hello. Yeah. Is my screen is visible?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Right. මම කොතනින්ද නැවැත්තුවේ අන්තිමට ඔයගොල්ලන්ට දිනවන්න අයියා.
අවුට් එක ගන්න දරනේ නෑ කන්ට්‍රෝල් එකනේ දාලා තියෙන්නේ.
Okay. මේ get all students කරාද?
ඒක ඩිස්කස් කර හිටියේ. ඒක මේ ඇතුළට ගියේ නෑ ඩීප් ගියේ නෑ. අවුට් එකට ගියේ නෑ.
Right. Okay. Inside the curly braces, what I'm going to do is I'm going to import a student model, and here I'm going to define a method called find, right? And you can go to Mongoose documentation, and under guide there is an option called queries, right? Here you can see all the methods that we can use. If you want to get something by ID, you can use find by ID. If you want to delete something, you can use find by ID and delete. And if you want to update something, you can use find by ID and update. So these are the methods that we can use in Mongoose package, right? So to get all student records, right? To get all student records, we can use find method. So I'm going to call student.find, and it will return all the student records here. So here I pass students, and here I want to give output as res.json, and I'm going to pass the students here, right? If there is something went wrong in the catch, he can give the response as error. Okay. Finally, after implementing those add student method and get all student method, here we are going to use these two methods in a file called routes, right? So to use those methods, I want to export these two methods first. So I can achieve this by writing module.exports, and here I'm going to give these two methods. All right. Okay, basically we are done with the control also. So now what we have to do is okay, let's see. Let's run the Express server now. Not server.js. Okay, I think everything is good, right? Okay, now we are done with models and controller. Now basically what we have to do is we have to implement the routes. Okay, right. So now we have to add Api Endpoints Route, so the server can use those routes to perform the CRUD operation, right? So at the root of the project, let's create a folder called routes, and inside the routes folder we can create a file called student.route.js. Okay, here we are going to define our route. So let's first import the express package. Require express, and then to use as a route, so there is a method called router in express package. So let's create a constant variable called router. It equals to express dot router, right? And before moving on inside the server.js package, I'm going to do some changes, right? So here I'm going to make a variable called cost, and import the cost npm package, and then after this I'm going to use this cost, right? Then after this I'm going to do this implementation also, app.use, and inside the method I'm going to specify express.json method, right? Actually what I did was, we are dealing with JSON objects, right? So we are telling that server that we are going to use JSON objects. So that's why I use this express.json method. It is a inbuilt method in Express, right? After that I'm going to do something like this. I will explain this later. App.use, here as the first parameter I will give something like this, API/student, and as the second parameter I'm going to import the controller file, right? I will go let's select the controller folder, sorry, router folder, routes, and inside that there is a file called student.route, right? Here what we are doing is මේව දෙයක්. ඒ කියන්නේ දැන් අපි API endpoint එකක් කියන එක මම හිතන්නේ ඔයගොල්ලෝ දන්න ඇති. මම ඔයගලන්ට ඕන Postman එකේ ගිහිල්ලා පෙන්නන්නම්. එතකන් Postman එක open වෙනකම් මම මෙහෙම දෙයක් කරන්නකො කමෙන්ට් එක. අපි දැන් API endpoint එක විදිහට call කරන්නේ මෙන්න මේ වගේ URL එක. හරිද? http://local host අපේ port number එක මෙතන දෙනවා 5000/API/student, right? So අපි මේක දුන්නොත් මොකද වෙන්නේ? ඒගොල්ලෝ මෙන්න මේ ෆයිල් එකට student.route කියන ෆයිල් එකට point කරනවා. හරිද? එතකොට මේකේ මෙන්න මේක ඇතුලේ තියෙන දේවල් තමයි ඒගොල්ලෝ load කරන්නේ. හරිද? එතකොට අපි මෙහෙම දුන්නා. So the next thing is inside the, okay, now you can see Api crash, right? It happens because there is nothing implemented here regarding the routes. So let's implement it. Okay, inside the routes file, first we import the express package, and then there is a method called router. So we initialize it to a constant variable called router. So to use those routes, first we have to import the here add the student and get all student from student.controller. So I'm going to write const, and here I'm going to use destructuring, and in the curly braces I will pass this add the student method and get all student record student method, and I'm going to import this from the controller class, controller file. Right. Here the file is student control, right? Okay, now I will do some implementation like this, right? Router dot host, and here as the first parameter I will add something like this, /add, and as the second parameter I'm going to give add student method. Okay, make it into menu there. You can have then server.js අපේ API endpoint එක මෙන්න මෙහෙම වුණොත් http://localhost:5000/api/student/add සහ API endpoint එක මේක නම් සහ අපේ http request method එක post නම් හරිද මේ දෙකම satisfy වෙනවා නම් මෙන්න මේ add student කියන method එක execute කරන්න ඕනේ. ඒක point කරන එක තමයි මෙතන වෙන්නේ. හරිද? එතකොට ඒක තමයි මෙතන කරලා තියෙන්නේ. ඒ කියන්නේ අපිට මොකක් හරි add student මොකක් හරි කාහරි student record එකක් අපිට insert කරන්න ඕන නම් අපි call කරන්න ඕනේ මෙන්න මේ endpoint එක. හරිනේ? එතකොට ඊළඟ එකටත් එහෙමයි to get all student I will add something like implement something like this router.get. මෙතන අපි දාන්නේ අර http request method එකට හරියන method එක. ඒ කියන්නේ post එක ගන්න post කියලා දෙනවා. get http request method එක ගන්න get කියලා දෙනවා. ඊට පස්සේ delete නම් delete, update නම් put හරි patch හරි අන්න වගේ method එකක් දෙන්න පුළුවන්. එතකොට මේකෙදි first parameter එක විදිහට අපි දෙනවා slash let's give it as /all, and as the second parameter we are going to pass get all student method. Okay, and finally what we have to do it, we are going to export this router. Okay, actually now basically we are done with the backend application. What we have to do now is we have to check our backend application is whether is running or not perfectly. So for now we don't have any front-end application, so to test our API endpoints we can use a software called Postman, right? Okay, this is the API call for the add student record. Here you can see the endpoint http://localhost:5000/api/student/add. I think the same, right? Wait, the server is api/student. Okay, and /add, and here you can select the http request method, whether it is the post or get or put or patch or delete or http request method. So in the body select raw and select JSON, then you can select JSON here. You can select JSON, is it a XML or something like that. So here I'm going to dealing with JSON of this, so I select JSON, and here we will give some attributes. There is a JSON object, and as the key and value I give name and name as Dinuan, and SLIIT ID as for the SLIIT ID I will give something like this, and for the age something like this. So what I'm going to do here is click on the send button, so then we can see our request is success or not. So here you can see it returns the document that we have created, right? You can see here the document ID, and let's create another JSON object. I will give Senura as the name, and I will give my ID number and my age. Right, let's click on send. Okay, here you can see the created document here, right? Our add student method is okay. Now we have to check get all student. You can see the endpoint is this API/students/all, and our http request method is get, right? So let's click on send. Here you can see it returns the JSON objects as an array. Here you can see the objects that we have created, Senura and Dinuan. These are the things that we have created earlier, and these are the things that we entered now, Right. This is the basically backend part. Before moving on, I will push these to the GitHub. Right. I will stop the server now. And I think in the previous session, we used the terminal to push the GitHub code, right? So now I will use the VS Code extension. Here you can see under the search icon, there is a icon to the source control, and go here, and here you can give a commit message, right? So I'm going to give something like this: implemented routes controller and mod, right? So we can take this, right? Okay, now what we have to do is we can push the code to the main branch, but that is not a good practice. So what I'm going to do here is click on this main, and I'm going to create a new branch, right? I'm going to name it as feature slash what we can for now I will give like backend, because okay, backend. Okay, and what I'm going to next is click on this icon. Right, I think we successfully pushed the code to the GitHub. Now you can go to our GitHub page here. Right, let's go to code. Here you can see there what are our recent changes, right? So click on this compare and pull request, and here we can give the branches from where to where, right? I am going to push the code, going to make a pull request from feature slash backend to the main branch, right? So here you can give a title for the PR, and here you can give assignees, reviewers. I will give Lasal and Luciru.
And Senura, excuse me,
yeah,
sorry to interrupt you, but when going down in the questions, I have realized that some of people did not understand what is the concept behind front end and back end. So and most importantly API. So they have some confusions of what are the programming languages that are used to develop front end and back end. So I think when doing the session, if you can get that picture that we have share some meme on in what is meme on API in the last session. So it's better if we can share that meme after a while also, so then they can understand easily what is actually backend and front end, because at the last session theoretical they have identified that one, but it's better if we can show now as well. I think they have some confusions.
Yeah, I think when it comes to Rusiru, we will show that, right?
Yeah.
Okay. 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 Now for the assignee, I will assign myself, and here for the project, I can select my project as ITP application, and okay, now I can create a pull request. Okay, after creating a pull request, I can link my issue. My issue is implement the models, controller, and routes.